Hello, and welcome back to the Geek on My Sleeve channel. This is going to be over Iron Prince, Warformed Stormweaver's Book 1 by Luke Chmilenko and Bryce O'Connor. Did I say a number? Like I did. Geek Out number 74.
Yeah. Um, I'm super pumped that we worked this into the rotation. We've covered several of Luke Chmilenko's book, and this is the second collaboration that we've covered with Bryce O'Connor and Luke Chmilenko. And it's been a minute since we did, was it Reign of Kings? Oh, I feel so bad.
Or Mark of
Mark of
Kings.
Kings, yes. And gosh, I want to get into a spoiler-free review, but after spending so much time in the lit RPG space and then thinking back to that book, in a lot of ways, I feel like this is the epic fantasy lit RPG we didn't know we wanted. And when this first dropped on Audible, I think it went to Kindle and print first, and then Audible caught up a little bit later. And
Mm.
yeah, hey.
Sorry, Bryce O'Connor, and welcome. You're in the Audible listing or the Amazon listing. You are first. We know and love Luke Chmilenko from his Ascend Online series. We are dedicated to getting involved in more of your stuff after reading Iron Prince and Mark of
Yes.
Kings. So
Yes.
you are next on our, yeah, if this is what we have to see from you.
I mean, dragons, right?
Yeah,
Dragons.
I'm excited from the oh, I don't have the series pulled up, but the graphics on some of your
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by. It's this series, it's just building up so much. Like it's the ultimate origin story, right? And happy belated Mother's Day to everyone, as I think Peter was saying it before we hopped
oh
online. Like
yeah.
what a great way to celebrate Mother's Day than to talk about one of our new favorite orphans, Ray, and his rise to godhood. But yes, um, yes, and dragons and sci-fi. It's hard. Like my two great loves, sci-fi and fantasy, and um, yeah, yeah. I was really
Or
interested in all the genres that this one kind of checked off when we were looking at it on Audible, between sports combat and everything. And sorry, go ahead, Pete.
or I was gonna say this is a test. Did I break it correctly?
It's not uncommon for the best of us to come from nowhere. Tradition, blood, history, all that only means so much when it comes to being selected as a user. In the end, what our devices and duty demand the most of from us is heart. Heart and the willingness to sacrifice what we must to become as strong as we can possibly be. Colonel Rama Guest. Funeral of Brigadier General Blake Horn.
All right, did that come through all right?
That came through beautifully, and
I have
Luke
a bit of an
Daniels
echo
is
the way I looped
amazing
it.
on the voice narration, and yeah, just so many great quotes and such an inspirational story, like the
Oh
underdog
yeah.
and the rise to the top, and just all of its glory. Gosh, yeah. I I you need to end up reading Ender's Game, but for me, like it brought a lot of great elements of my favorite series between like My Hero Academia and Ender's Game and just like the CAD technology. Um
I can't remember the
and like
anime. I think it's called God Eater, where essentially they get a band that allows them to communicate with their weapon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and there's so many questions there. I want to get into some of the details and the layers of just like the foreshadowing and seeing how it's all set up. Because like partway through the book, for those of you new to the channel, spoilers ahead, bear with us, but um, you've talked about it before on other streams that we've done where you're okay with the spoilers. And in a lot of ways, like this book tells you what's going to happen as Ray rises to the top.
So, yeah, spoilers ahead. The series is called Stormweaver, and there are several good quotes, which I have actually prepared today, that pretty much come out and say, hey, Raiden, the god of lightning, is actually the Stormweaver. And this is, like Carl was saying, the origin story started from the bottom. Now I'm here, very much a My Hero Academia when, you know, had no potential, had no power,
Mm-hmm.
growing into our power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, and gosh, so many different side tangents and rabbit holes that I want to go down there. But just his rise and the struggles and the foreshadowing there. Just the way that so much of the world building was given to us, like that's something we've talked about as well on other streams, just kind of like the progression and the data dump. It's so subtle and worked in, like how does the ranking work, how does like all this stuff work, how do things scale. And as we get introduced to Ray and just kind of like this universe as he's going through, and we get to see how this branch of the military works with the assessment, as well as like how it's cleverly worked into Ray taking the test as it breaks down like the value ranks, where everything's like 9 to 0 ranks A through F, with A9 being ranked the highest. So like it subtly slips
or
that in
did you
into the
say
testing.
F or S? Sam?
F to A, but then S
Oh yeah,
is
yeah. S
technically
has its
top
own
tier. Mm-hmm.
classifications.
Mm-hmm. And then it breaks down how the classes are in descending order from king to queen, depending on gender, then rook, then knight, then bishop, then pawn, and just how like it subtly works that into the test. And you're like, oh, okay. And then when we get our CAD assignments, like it's right there in our forefront, and it's like, oh my gosh, so he finally got pushed through.
Or well, that whole incident there, I like the final test or the third test with Ray opens up so much potential, and I thought that's where it was gonna go. It was gonna be more, I guess, military-esque frontline, us against the other AI, and it's
Later
still
books,
to
it has to
come.
be, right?
And I mean, we have at least 3 books of getting through university, and then oh, even the bishop ended up spending some time in the SCTs and competing before she went to the front line. But
Volunteered.
there are several instances. I
There's so much there too that we don't know yet, right? About the war. Because
oh yeah, that
it's very
was
much the boogeyman at the border, right? While the rest of us are just sitting here watching this epic sports fighting, right? With their CADs and everything. Um, so I just as we go through a couple more quick things, like it breaks down like the user specs, explains strength, endurance, speed, cognition, how the different stat attributes work in there, as well during the testing, as well as the different CAD types, 7 different CAD types: brawler, mauler, lancer, saber, duelist, phalanx, and then A type, which is our boy Ray, and how that all works. So as we outline all these elements, we've talked about it before, having so much fun in the lit RPG genre and how hard it is to quantify this. Would you consider this under the umbrella? Because in my mind,
So I wouldn't
you got those
say
stats there, right?
lit RPG because maybe it's a subconscious thing, but there's no transition. This is like the
I
opposition
don't know.
where
I would argue once he gets to CAD,
once he
there's your
gets to CAD,
transition.
okay, possibly, but for me, it's so they've done it differently if it could be considered where they're essentially painting a picture of a world going on. But I don't, because normally with lit RPGs, there's like sucked into another world or
Mm-hmm.
downloaded consciousness into the game, and I think they have more of a MMO RPG base. I definitely would say RPG, where his role is an A type and he's going through the system and there's stats and progression, but
Yeah, for
science
those.
fantasy progression.
Yeah, Bryce
It's
O'Connor, one
hard
of the
it's hard to
authors, chimed
quantify.
in.
It's really good.
But that makes sense though. And as we've gotten more into the channel and reading, kind of like learning the different subgenres, science, fantasy, progression, I could see that. Because a lot of it very feels sci-fi, but it's not like a hard sci-fi, how you go through and you break it down and explain it.
Yeah, they've
But
built a beautiful world.
for me, I cut my teeth on fantasy back in the day with Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, and like got the reading itch, worked my way into sci-fi, and we've been having so much fun with lit RPG and that subgenre blowing up. Like this book for me just encapsulates all the favorite goodies, and like even to the point where the hint of him rising to godhood, and you can kind of see it as you go through and you look at the stats and how like the last two questions with Ray when they ask him like what all impacts the cat has on them, and it goes through and like breaks down everything from pretty much like rebuilding their body, repairing DNA imperfections, decreasing the dependency on blood and oxygen supply and everything, like endurance, like just, pretty much rebuilding them from the ground up. And you can just kind of see the foreshadowing of Ray into godhood, right? And the progression, we get some like time skips a little bit later, like a couple days to weeks at a time. But when you stop and you look at it, there's so many times where it's like they talk about how rapidly he progressed just in this first part of the year, right? Going from the very, very bottom to where his body could hardly even tolerate
assignment
that.
fatigue.
Yeah, yeah.
Real
And
quick,
go ahead.
Ray B, who created the genre literature RPG? Well, that is a good question. As of currently, it has been coined for Alarong Kong, the author of The Land, to be the father of lit RPG.
He's
But
coined it.
I would say the idea has been around for quite some time. I guess example would be kind of like The Matrix, where you're sucked into another world, or Narnia, where you go through a magical portal into another world,
That's
or
where
but
the
those aren't
genres kind of get
quite
into splitting hairs,
a lit
right? Like
RPG because there's not
isekai
really the
books.
RPG, but yeah, then I was gonna say isekais and
Yeah,
what
yeah. Um, yeah,
but the
I was about to
land.
say
So
it's so controversial.
I would ask what you think. Who was the creator? He coins himself as the father, and that's
well,
where I really got started.
It's so hard to even define it too, right? Because there's so many different flavors
Yeah,
of
yeah, and
it. But
subgenres and
yeah, there we go.
Japanese storytelling has been doing it for decades. Yeah,
I noticed there were a couple nods to Japanese storytelling in this one as well. Like
the
the name
name for
of the
what does her
cat.
name mean? The seed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then, Ray, our main guy, being Raiden.
Yes. Yes. Um Yeah, like I said, when I first listened to this, I probably listened to it 2 or 3 passes, and I forget what book we were geeking on that week, but I kept telling you, like, please listen to this because so much of what we enjoy about lit RPG is in here, as well as the sci-fi, fantasy, and who doesn't love a good underdog story,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
And then just the
My
personality.
only
Go ahead.
negative of the whole book, and it's only because I love it so much, is the cover for me doesn't quite happen. So we already said spoilers. The cover, as far as like Ray and being kitted out, yes, that's our final form that we achieve in this book. That is the big Mahler fight where he finally does his I'm sorry, I forget the name. It's like something shift, type shift, where he switches from his brawler setup to a saber.
Is it an astral shift? Something
I
like that?
sorry for butchering the name. But yeah, so as far as the image goes, I don't like it almost looks like he's fighting against robot opponents. The cover is a really good thing to bring up because like the cover it's hard for me to figure out because I know when you get to like S class, they've got externals and they've got like full suits of armor. So at first I was like, okay, maybe it's the S class people, but type shift. Okay, yeah.
Thank
So
you, Bryce.
up against the oh man, the Mauler and his name is said so many times. We use our
Sorry.
type shift, so
Oh, the last and final fight, right?
yeah, the book cover, yes, that's where Raiden ends up, but it's also in the setting of an arena, which I guess it is a military school, so it could be like that. But then they
Mm-hmm.
also emphasize that the arena's never full. Plus, we're just doing our testing, and other people have classes going on, as well as there's 4 combatants versus him, which I don't think he does a 1v4 unless it is kind of like this whole book where it's hinting at what is to come and hinting at there is so much more.
Yeah, so Bryce O'Connor said it's definitely a stretch of the concept, but we wanted something that couple imply everything Warformed could be, so we decided to push the art a bit. And for
Okay,
me,
and
that's kind of where I was at.
it
Like as
fits.
each evolution, I thought back to the cover, and I'm like, is this where we're going? Because he just starts out. I think it's just his right hand when he
Yep,
first gets assigned.
never shirtless, and that's what kind of gave me the edge for its future, its
Mm-hmm.
progress, its
Mm-hmm.
potential and evolving because currently he's still stuck in his uniform or his university garb. So
And we get quotes from people that we've met. And when we get the quotes, right, like we get one from the Lasher when he's later
oh,
at an S
I
rank. You have
yeah,
that
I
that
didn't
lovely
get
one.
that one. That was the
Oh,
one that I didn't grab because the
but we
quote
know it's
I
coming.
needed the before. But if I had to give you one with referencing Stormweaver. Oh, yeah.
Never seen anything like it. Not before and not since. It wasn't passion that drove the kid. Passion is too insubstantial a word. He was more like fire. Yeah, fire. It was like his every fibre burned for more, to become more, growing stronger and hotter with every breath he took. Lieutenant Michael Bretz, S-rank pawn class. concerning the Stormweaver.
Yeah, so there's
There's
a
a good
couple
Stormweaver
that
quote, yeah.
references Stormweaver.
And one of the other things we've talked about that we enjoy about stories and why we keep coming back to some of these ones is like um,
Are hard to
just the
fit lessons in these kind of books. Maybe I'm biased. That's like
well,
the whole big reason of this channel is to get more people to read and to get them to so little rant. People take things too personally.
thanks for
Okay.
stopping by, Bryce.
Oh, yep. My
Go ahead.
so in a book setting, you kind of separate yourself from the situation, you see it, and then you get to watch other people go through it and learn from their mistakes, so to speak, and learn oppositions. For example, Ray gets bullied a lot, and he typically has a witty comeback. When that didn't work, he killed him with kindness. When the Mauler was behind him and he's like, wow, you don't like space or something. He's like, well, that's funny because
You
you were
got to
so
see
close, you
his
could have been my
intelligence.
my
Yeah, yeah,
suit.
yeah.
So I felt like it was full of them, and maybe that's just because that's a favorite thing of mine.
Yeah, there's been times since I first listened to this book where it's like, just gotta channel Ray's determination and his work ethic a bit. Just the number of times he gets knocked down and comes back up, and his overall outlook on I'm improving. Yes, I lost 20 times in a row, but I went from, 4 seconds to 5 seconds to 10 seconds to um, for every challenge there's a creative solution to come at it and tackle it from a different direction, right? And we got to see that as he slowly worked his way up, and kind of had to fight for his place there.
Or what you really mean is
Luck comes to those who wait. Or those willing to get up and get shit done. Ancient Earth proverb.
Yes, yes, yes.
the only problem I have with this book is there isn't a second one. Yeah, Bryce just said that he's got secret serial.
Serial project. Yeah, yeah. Then back to SW2.
Yep, Stormweaver 2. Yeah, that is a tricky, complicated topic. Prior, I wouldn't touch a series until it had a couple because I like to marathon mode. But,
Mhm.
We enjoy
This
Luke Chmilenko. We've seen other Bryce O'Connor work. We enjoy Bryce O'Connor. So, yeah, and it was a decent length.
I was about to
So
say,
it has a
compared to our
lot involved.
typical lit
Yeah.
RPGs, this is 2 to 3 books worth of content. And the first time I went through it, I truly appreciate that. I think we had just come off, maybe it was Ruthless, the Completionist Chronicles. That's like 10-ish hours. I think I listened to this one around the first time we were covering that one. And it seems so long, but then on the re-listens, it just seems to fly by so fast. But it's because of the scaling and the pacing, like even introducing, our different characters, kind of like our core group that ends up training evening after evening there.
Well, for
Gosh, what a
me,
diverse group of walks of life right there. Go ahead.
it does well with kind of the relatability or humanizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he comes from a horrible situation with the abandonment and his medical stuff, but then he's just another kid at school and going to university, and they've all got cliques and they've got people who have had advantage. And
Yeah, but even when he was bullied, I don't want to say like it was justified, but you could understand where they're coming from, right? Like
The
some of them
best
were
explanation was right after he got jumped, and when Catcher is talking to him and saying like, "Yeah, people are scared. Like, hell, I'm even scared. Not that you should change." And that was really what solidified it, where, or at least for me, the the scope of it is essentially everybody else is already going, let's say, 40 miles an hour, and here comes Ray, where he starts from zero, where they're already going 40. So it's time to catch up. But by the time he's caught up, he's already blowing past them because he's had to go faster than them to catch them.
it starts off that um, the school is so competitive that they only take like 1/4 of the normal recruits. So they're worried about him taking away time and attention from them to all of a sudden like he's approaching the front of the pack by the end of the book, especially after he gets that last evolution there.
Yeah, actually having an ability to his name. Oh man,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see some of the other abilities come through, and that's when they teased us with the Lashers
Yes.
fight.
Yes, and there's just so much beautifully done about this book, right? Like even all the way back to the beginning, right? Like we open up with Luke Grant, who ends up being kind of like his major rival slash nemesis of this book, getting approved by the board, and then the Iron Bishop going and fighting for him, just to get in, and then to end that being our final battle where kind of the two quote unquote champions of these diverging schools of thought there.
Well, and that's another concept or thing that they kept hinting at without actually coming out and saying it. So my theory, indulge me,
Mhm,
is Grant has a member of his family who he was close to, who was fighting on the front lines of the war, who had someone of a weaker type who was enlisted and fighting alongside of him.
mhm.
His relative ends up taking a blow or covering the other guy, and yeah, ends up perishing.
Yeah,
But
and
it,
they
yeah,
go ahead. Well, they almost seem to come to an understanding by the end of it, and you can understand where he's coming from and why he's so driven to do well. Um, but yeah, there's so
yeah,
much there, like him and Vic or whatnot, like
or Viv.
Viv, yeah. Him asking Ray about Viv after the match and just kind of that like
Well, and
interesting
that
courtship
was
going
another
on.
one of those like unspoken truths or things going on because you had the whole after Ray got beat up and then oh, you just said his name, the Mauler ends up we don't see very many Maulers. Anyway, the Mauler ends up taking out his crew and then Viviana ends up, being pretty close-lipped and shook up and
Hmm.
it I'm not sure if it was beautifully done or if it was like, really, is that gonna happen? You're telling me right now. Where after he has a confrontation with Grant,
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, someone Dorsey, after he beat him up for not letting him uh copy his homework, and then she dated him, and she was like, yeah, I let him along, and then I dumped him. He's like, oh, my hero.
Uh,
But now we just need to get Catcher someone who actually is going to be Cash, because skipping
well,
forward when we're
maybe, but
putting
we're foreshadowing some romantic tension there because
what are you talking about?
Catcher clearly has a thing for Viv. You don't think
Hey,
so? I mean, like just the way around, like did
I
Luke
thought
Grant hurt her and just like the overprotectiveness there and all that stuff. I think there's going to be some love triangle drama there. Who knows?
Yeah,
Um,
I could, but so at the end, when we're putting our team together and we're about to, do summer stuff, getting ready for the team aspects,
mhm,
we've got Arlia Rolong, our Phalanx, who is matching up with Raiden,
mhm.
main character. Then we have Catcher, who's going to match up with Cash because, they actually seem to be able to stand each other. Um, then we have Viviana and Grant, who are going to be a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be a very interesting dynamic. Yeah, yeah. Gosh, like how awesome would this be to have as an anime? I mean, like
Depending on who does it. If we're talking like Naruto type stuff where we have way more episodes than we need, yes.
I
It,
was about to
it
say like where's the problem here? More
or well,
episodes?
that versus oh, I can't remember the name. Or well, here's another one that's similar yet not. Is it wrong to pick up chicks in a dungeon or whatever where it's got like an obscenely long name, but it's only like 13 episodes?
No, we would need a
Yeah,
binge
we
to get
well,
all the
and then
way
you go the
through
other end
the
where you've got
circuits
like
and
Game
God
of
Ascension
Thrones
and
decking out like hour-long episodes.
yes, we need to add that to your reading list.
Nope, can't do names.
Too many names there.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we bounce all over the place. We've got the origin, essentially bone knives and the medical condition, getting the CAD, which I thought was very interesting. It's more like it attaches to them on a molecular level,
Mm-hmm.
where the only physical sight is the armbands on either arm, but
Mm-hmm.
the sensation and going through it, as well as being able to modify your body and update your stats and so on and so forth. Ghost in a Shell,
Yes.
standalone complex style.
Yes. In a
I
lot of ways, like I could see some similarities here already. White Thatch has it right on. I think the original Ghost in the Shell was like 2 seasons, 25 episodes each. And
but he's talking about the standalone.
I think yeah. But it yes. So many questions, even kind of along those lines, because Ghost in the Shell asks those questions in regards to like AI and human and sentience and all that stuff. And like there's some similarities here with the CAD and just kind of like his CAD
And the
awareness
mind.
and the mind, the AI that's like learning and growing and adapting and fighting there, and the symbiosis between user and the CAD learning and growing, and the AI learning and growing and developing to stay ahead in these fights. Yeah, the book just does such a good job easing us into the world, scaling us up, and then, gosh, that like final sprint there where Ray was already pushing himself so hard trying to get the extra hours in, and the Iron Bishop's intervention to get Lasher to help train them. And that last little sprint, I think you said one of your favorite quotes there was him being quote unquote late. He was trying to like get in all this
Yeah,
extra training,
yeah.
and then he's like, show up. I was like 6 or 9 a.m., something like that. And he shows up a little before, and he's like, I expected you to be warmed up and us to be fighting by, this time. You're not even in uniform. Like, let's go.
And then he's like, "Oh, I made it. 2 minutes to spare." And it's like, wham.
Yep,
You're
yep.
not.
What's the point
And
in eating
then,
as I go and vomit it all up?
yeah, I love the part where the top 20 don't fight the. Oh, fine, you click it. Where the top 20 don't fight the other AI. It's a smart move. So that's, yeah, the forward backward of continuously putting them into combat and the mind being able to tap into it and observe everything.
And learn
Yeah.
from them. And it makes sense, right? And we kind of saw a little bit of that when the AI was talking about how like the mind is the one that like made the test to try to find the best users, but it was the humans that
Added the
suggested some of
level
the
of entrapment. Yeah.
and it kind of made you think. And he referenced the fact that he could have come up with it on his own if he had enough processing power, but his power was so grand that he, with like thousands of interviews across like all these different times and spaces, was using like less than 1,000% of its overall power, right? So
Yeah,
that's where the
which leads into
human
more.
element comes in, and the learning part of it, which makes sense in a lot of ways. And we've talked about it before with a lot of our books, like the immersion, the buy-in is a big like sniff test, right? Like don't just have this because of the plot, like help us feel it and buy into it. And the book does an amazing job with it. And yeah, Luke and Bryce, like super well polished authors, just
Or
like the overall hero's journey of this. Go ahead.
so I don't know if it's counted as surpassed, but yeah, the final test with Raiden.
White Thatch says the mind can use it to surprise the other AIs to gain an advantage.
Oh,
Um,
that's surprise, not surpass.
and that's yeah, we really don't learn a whole lot about. Is it the Archons, the boogeyman at the
Yeah,
border?
yeah.
Like it kind of suggests we learn that the CAD technology is very similar to what they do.
Or stolen, modified.
Right, but we don't have to worry about them quote unquote hacking it. But if it's borrowed, stolen, whatever, learning to fight other wielders essentially prepares you for the front lines, right?
Yeah, as well as giving the mind more information to pull
More data
from,
points.
and
Mm-hmm.
every sidestep fantasy game or lit RPG that's out there, it's always like, oh, humans aren't proficient in one thing, they're proficient in versatility. Yeah, so that's our potential. The computers being too logical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, oh man, so much, so much. Yeah.
We plan. God laughs. Ancient Earth proverb.
Yeah.
So, not directly in relation to anything, but so much of this is talking about how the drive and the fire and, needing to be better and do more. And then that one was just like, what? It doesn't matter because God just laughs. And then,
Yeah.
oh, it kind of relates to this, which actually this should have been the first one I played for the opener.
I find the stories irritating in their own right. They so often paint the image of some lone hero, some singular legend left to his solitary climb, bearing on his own the building hardships of a violent life. It's all ludicrous. It's not even that I never would have made it alone. I never would have even taken the first step up. The Stormweaver, circa 2495.
I wonder who they're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah. It's true though, and he sees that, and the other people see that, and it kind of makes you wonder because they imply that the AI, like, they go through the test of intelligence, physical capability, and then the mind pretty much does a psych evaluation, right, during that last part, to
Yeah.
see if they're capable of handling it. Because, as the Iron Bishop so greatly quotes, with great power comes great responsibility.
What's up with these kids these days?
Spider-Man.
No appreciation for the classics when there's SCT fights.
And there's something you said. It seems like the mind is interacting with her directly, and I wonder when we'll get her backstory. Because I have some thoughts on that. I wonder if the mind reached out directly after her accident on the front line when she implied
I
she
feel
nearly
like a
lost
lot
it.
of the higher ups, or maybe it's one of those like once you reach a certain evolution, you just know. But there were a couple moments where they were like, oh, I wonder what they were thinking or what it was thinking. Like they were clearly implementing that the mind was behind the whole thing. Or maybe it's just like people inside the military
Well, yeah,
umbrella.
yeah. Kind of the overarching thought I was building at is we've seen it in other book series, the concept of the AIs not only need to protect humanity from external threats, but to protect humanity from internal threats as well. And I
True.
think that's part of the mind's responsibility with that third assessment. They talk about how there hasn't been too many CAD users that have kind of like gone rogue. There's been only a handful of instances, but it's something that the mind probably takes into consideration is, if we give them this power, how far beyond that power, where we can't keep it in check, it starts to become a danger to the inner system as well, right? So by Ray starting from nothing, but also being humble, um, and going through the struggles to have empathy for those who are weak and those who are in pain as he goes and rises with that power, and then the nurture of kind of this nuclear family that he's developed there with Viv and the Iron Bishop and some of these other mentors. um Again, it just ties into his overall character about he didn't get there alone, right? It wasn't just a solo hero's journey. He had a full party on this quest to defeat the evil at the border. Did you have a quote you wanted to drop?
It's a little long, but yeah.
It is in the nature of man to betray. Our very system of governance is based on the concept. Seeing to the many too often requires turning one's back on the few. Addressing the greater good so frequently involves the casting aside of lesser needs and those in said need. There is no real choice in it. Betrayal, in the end, is more often than not a body's greatest tool of survival. Dr. Everett Weaver, Ph.D., 23rd century philosopher, Mars.
So yeah, that was basically what you were saying,
Mm-hmm.
but from the book where nature of man.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, because of his support system, because of everybody, he didn't become too jaded, right? Like, yeah, we got to see him discouraged, kind of buy into the believability, but as often as he gets knocked down, he has the motivation and the drive and the will to get back up and keep going and keep going. Um,
Well, my only comment, sidestep,
uh,
is he's overpowered. It doesn't seem like it.
not
And
not yet.
they've done a very good job having him work his way up and struggle and, fight for everything that he has, but having that limitless potential And as a lot of the quotes entail, is yeah, he's going to become the Stormweaver and more than yeah.
I'm really curious to see the evolutions and how they continue because he's developing.
I think his ability that he has now will essentially, because it's type shift, will allow him to use any type. But now it's about getting proficient, because in that final match with the Mauler, he talks about how when he does the type shift to a saber,
Yeah,
he loses a lot of his speed.
yeah.
So which is kind of it makes sense. Brawler is speed cognition
Mm-hmm.
oriented, where Saber is more of a well balanced. So in one to the next, it makes sense because he's losing speed because that's his brawler stats, and I think it'll be fun to have him figure it all out.
Yeah.
What's a geek out? A geek out is a spoiler filled geeky discussion where we deep dive, dissect, theory craft, talk with others, and geek out or gush.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Thanks for the question, noob to oaf.
we're
Uh,
trying to point it. Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty much what we did anyway when we would be chatting over the different books that we read, and we decided, hey, we wanted to find more people in this lovely little corner of the internet to talk about these books with as well. And yeah, yeah. Thanks everybody who's joined us today and hangs out with us on these weekly geek outs. Um, there's so much in this book, and it's hard to get to it in the hour and a half we try to dedicate to these streams. But there's a handful of questions and things I kind of want to get some theory crafting from you on. Um, they hint at it earlier in the book, like with Viv, how her curls always go back into place. And we're in
Well,
the era of designer babies where, you know,
they get
all these,
genetically modified, and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, all these physical elite specimens of humanity are here around him. And he's barely 5'6", right? In Liberty units. Um, and that he talks about his roommate who's around 5'10" is on the shorter side for these guys. So most of them are like 6 to 7 feet, heavy, like built muscle mass. And then he's barely 5'6" by the start. And that's with his DNA correction and everything. And, you just, there's so many times I forget about how much smaller he is. He could literally be on average like a foot shorter than most of these people he's up fighting against, right? And he's constantly called out for that. And he's still starting to hold his own as his body corrects and adjusts and fills out, ascending into godhood. So there's that, but him and Viv at one point get into the debate where he's a designer baby as well, right? And she's challenging
Well,
on
and
him on
that
that. And we
was
see a bit at
my
the end, right? The family that all of a sudden, they have all this power and they're tracking stuff on the feed. Like, is he potentially like heir or scion to this great household? Thoughts?
So, back up real quick.
Okay.
They talk about the designer product, but it's in reference to hair, because they see someone's
Well,
hair and they're like, "Oh, I
because it's
wonder
a dead
if they
giveaway.
thought." Yeah, and that was really the big lead in, and then they transition with, "Okay, blue eyes for days." And so I think it has more to do with potential baseline for like hair, eyes, skin tone, but with all the other technology we have, I could see it going much further. And they
Come
didn't
on,
really
come
give
on.
us a direct answer.
I'm going to challenge that a bit. That's just the visual cues that we can see with technology and everything we hear, even in like the early segments at the beginning of chapters, kind of alluding to how far technology has come. The ultra wealthy and elite, which a lot of his peers are, they have the money to basically
Okay.
min
So
max their
that's
kids' stats.
this quote here.
All right, give it to us.
Modern medicine is no miracle. There is yet no money to be made in ridding the world of disease. We may have come a long way from the old ways of corruption and greed in the megacorporations of the early millennium. But mankind has not yet evolved into a civilization capable of surviving on cyclical charity. I used to think this fair. I used to think this a price worth paying for the treatments and tools we do have at our fingertips. After watching the Stormweaver rise these last years, however, I am forced to consider just how many great talents and brilliant minds our species has sacrificed over the centuries to illness and disease we couldn't be bothered to address. Colonel Willem Maid, Private Journals.
So yeah, I guess back to what you're saying, for people who have the money are able to provide a better starting point.
White Thatch
oh.
brought up a good segment from the book where White Thatch said there's a part where they talk about predicting future trends in looks. And I don't think that's too far off from the future. They're already talking designer babies, you know, in the foreseeable future. So like to make selections. Yeah.
I've heard about it in our lifetime, but it got a lot of kickback because of the whole religious insinuations for playing
Ethics
God
and
ethics and
but it's not far off into the foreseeable future, which kind of lends credibility. One of the things we've talked about looking for in the sci-fi realm, right? Like it could be within our future timeline. And so tying it back in, he's this orphan, yet when he makes it into the feeds, we get, and again, like I believe that it's like Japanese inspired family, or you can see the references there where this older gentleman has, I believe, like an assistant or something that comes in, seeing it, where they recognize the features and start calling in for other relatives. So we can anticipate some sort of great reveal at the beginning of book 2. But do you think there's a family reunion in the future? It sounds like you might.
Yes, but what is to come of it? So I see it being, oh, hey, we're your parents, and him being like, cool story, good talk.
Yeah.
And then the family coming back and having some sponsor or some other incentive to help assist him. Him getting entrapped in some legalese, of which then pretty much ends up like Arya, where he has to do select things, and next thing for him to overcome. But sidestep or back up, we finished book 1, and that's season or school year 1.
Is it all the way? Because I don't even think we're full the first year. I think we're only through the first term, right?
Yeah, out of 2.
And it's to start preparing for sectionals, right? Where this was kind of the internal competition. If you think of the My Hero Academia, it's more of like the internal one that's shared with everybody else. And then there's the next where you compete with the other schools.
Or other
right?
schools, and you're representing them.
Yeah. And they have individual bouts as well as team matches. And that's where
I guess the thing that throws me off is the summer for us is at the end. It's not in the middle, but this is outer space, right? Like, isn't summer in between years? I know I've been out of school for a while, but
yeah, I would need to go back and reference the end. I felt like we still had more of the first year to go. Um, but yeah, and he's in the C ranks. He came all the way from the F ranks to the C ranks in the first book. And that's where a lot of times, thinking of other book
which
series that I've
still
read,
doesn't put him at the top. And with
no.
his new type shift, he has a lot to learn for how to use what and where and how best to fit the team dynamic. And I see a lot of, what is it?
And
Wacky, waving, inflatable arm flailing tube man.
and most of his stats are behind because like the overall stat is kind of um an average or like a collective of all his different stats. So he
Yeah,
has
because he's got that
growth.
S. Yeah.
And that's what threw his overall stat up, where I think he was high Fs. I
Or I
think it
thought
was
it was mid
F8.
F4.
No, I think anyway, he's mid high Fs in the very beginning when he gets assigned, but he's an E3 by the time he fights at the commencement speech, where he's nearly a rank and a half, or nearly 2 ranks below this person. And his love interest and their romance is kind of cute, following along as it develops. The awkward teenagers, him being clueless and having Viv to kind of help him navigate that when she's not, setting him up for more fun later. But yeah, that growth spec, and
White Thatch. I've not had my DBZ quote yet.
yes.
And yeah, essentially he's a Super Saiyan, but he's always in the hyperbolic time chamber and always progressing at faster speeds.
Yep.
But the sad thing is he only gets one hair change because his hair was black, and then due to the medical conditions, it turns white.
Yeah, might be interesting to see as the DNA corrects, but I doubt it. Stay his white fox. And yeah, gosh, just their banter. Too fun. Let's see what other big theory questions I have for you. So we covered the family one. I think the sectionals are going to be
he's
pretty
Gohan.
fun. Yes.
Yeah, okay, because everybody else is already, leveled up and doing stuff, and
It's true. He's got Piccolo, the lasher, to kind of mentor him, to where here he talks about helping him to his ascension. Let's see. Gosh, if we were thinking of it in DBZ terms, so I don't even think he's at Frieza yet by the time he finishes book 1, though. Well, I guess if it was Gohan's perspective, yeah, okay, maybe we're at the Frieza saga at the end of book 1 here. On his way to powering up, though hopefully he won't be as much of a disappointment as Gohan is, though he does have the book smarts, right? Nearly a perfect score.
Yeah, that's where, oh man, when he lost to that Saber, I got a good chuckle out of it. She throws the sword, she yells magnetic hunt, and then it's like, wait a minute, what?
Yes.
Lava.
Overthought it. Yeah. And it's nice, like as much as he's overpowered and we know he's on his way to be overpowered, he's not infallible, right? Like he still lost. He still
They did very
loses.
well. He had to struggle to get to where he is, and we get to see the emotional turmoil from the bullies. We get to see,
Hmm.
the physical struggle of dedicating his heart and soul into everything. And then, yeah, it is played very well. Couldn't stop. Yeah, yeah. Someone
Thanks,
pulled the
White
wool
Thatch.
right over his eyes.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah.
And I guess going forward, like, yeah, he's a C0 or C1 0 at the end, but that's the start of where Arya Larong was, and we've been primarily internal for our school. Granted, they're
Hmm.
one of the best, but you know, yeah, there's going to be several other big contenders that started at that rank as well, so he's not out of the woods yet.
White Thatch, I like that other characters use stuff like that and not just the main character. Yeah. The So this very much was Ray's story, but I like the fact that we got to see other point of view characters and kind of like different perspectives on that. I guess, yeah, we had different point of view characters. Um, but also the fact that they were very diverse in their skill sets and strengths and weaknesses. And gosh, just like the tease at the potential of how much fun we could have in this universe. Like right now, we're still in the cadet phase, right? Like the low ranks. Like if you think Divine Dungeon scaling, like we start out F fishies, right, and work our way up into they're not even mage class yet in the B ranks. Um, and just gosh, can you imagine how much fun we're going to have when we get to like full scale combat and get to the sectionals, um, and just like everything else there. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Another thing that was kind of a tease is at the very beginning for the commencement ceremony when he fights off against Arya gets skewered, passes out, and
Mm-hmm.
then they have the summer class doing the team battles.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't get to see a whole lot of the team battles, but like you said, I was wrong, and they're halfway through the year, not fully through it. So we still have the second half to get into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And White Thatch brought up a good point about the characters. The characters in this book were so well rounded. Strengths, weaknesses, character flaws, quirks. I going through this book, gosh, like we've been following Luke for years now. Definitely want to get into more of Bryce's stuff, but they're both well-published guys, and you can just see the spit and polish on this series. Cannot wait until book 2 to come out and get to see more of the Storm Reaver and his ascension into godhood.
Oh yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of story in between now and then, but
hmm
yeah,
hmm
it
What
states it.
what other points do you want to hit? Because I know we're getting close on the time here. There's just so much good stuff. Any awesome quotes you want to toss in here as well?
Do not be afraid. Our fate cannot be taken from us. It is a gift. Inferno. Dante Alighieri.
As well as
He let out a moan of thanks as he took the coffee in both hands, tapping the lid so that the autoseal retracted, leaving an opening just wide enough to drink from. The smell made his skin tingle, and he gave Viv the best doe-eyed look he could manage. I take back what I said. You can be late to any potentially life-changing test you want if it means you bring me caffeine.
just a nod to all the caffeine drinkers
I was
out
about to
there.
say I'm noticing a theme, at least with Luke's book, and an obsession and passion for caffeine and coffee. Um, yes, yes.
Hello. Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah. Hey, Jess. Yes, yes.
So,
Caffeine and all its epic goodness. Thank you. These geek outs would not be possible without your goodness. Any other awesome quotes you want to bring in? Like, we had trouble just, cutting down the list of good life lessons.
so our fate is a gift is a good one. When we plan, God laughs because like all you can do everything in your power, but stuff happens, and then the bishop has one. Oh, here it is.
They always call promotions part of the climb. But that metaphor never made sense to me. I mean, if the brass are the ones who bear the weight of their responsibilities, of their choices, of their failures, then isn't it more like digging down into the ground and shouldering all that unfortunate heaviness you've deliberately placed upon yourself? Chief Warrant Officer Valera Dent. After a few too many drinks.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Can definitely relate to that. Yeah. Having a blast with this series. Would love to do a future geek out where we dive a little bit deeper on this. As always,
Or overcaffeinate is very much, or is from a different realm, but is very much like Overhaul. Except for I don't
yes,
think they get red. Yeah,
yes,
the Easter eggs.
yes. We appreciate everybody who showed up today for the live stream and those of you who watch us after the fact and continue the discussion on our Discord and in the comments below. Thank you, thank you. Happy Mother's Day again to everyone. And yeah, we're doing our part to try to be a little bit better at mapping out future geek outs for you guys, though your feedback is appreciated.
So about future live streams, we are working on it. We have a couple booked out and we'll be posting them here shortly. And that is my next thing on my list to do today.
We yes, White Thatch. I want to talk more about our favorite pillow
algorithm?
sunshine. Yeah, that's book 7 of the our Arterium series, our Pillow Mage.
Oh, Sunshine and Love Pillow Mage. So
yes.
That I believe made the list. We can shift and bump stuff if we need to. We're not to book
coming.
7. We're gonna start book 1 because that's I think literally the only book that we haven't done is that series. Oh, and Bibliomancer.
Dakota Kraut. Gosh, the reality is we're going to have to start doing more of these a week, guys. Let's just accept it for what it is. There's too many awesome books for us to talk about. So yes, White Thatch. Watch for updates on more Divine Dungeon, Dakota Kraut goodness. But next week you got our buffer up, Pete. What are we doing next week?
Bam.
Bam.
Next week is Viridian Gate Online Book 2 Crimson Alliance by James A. Hunter. I believe it's still considered a inclusive or included with Audible. The first 3 and or 4
and Kindle
included.
Unlimited for those that don't want to read with their ears. It is also on Kindle Unlimited. A lot of fun. We were really looking forward to seeing more author collaborations, and this is a series that they're doing a lot of it, and we want to get caught up. Not the
main one, but he does collabs for his side quests, or everybody's their own main character.
Yes. So that's next Sunday. Watch social media for the other updates. And yeah, we're probably going to be putting out feelers on the Discord that if we were to work in a second day a week
What day it
for,
would be?
yeah,
I
what days
would.
would work best for people? Go ahead.
Why are there 7 days? Because that doesn't math very well.
We
If I
should
was to
just,
put it in between everything, like I can do a book a day, no problem. But I can't do a book 5 times in 3 days, unless that's all I do.
why not? I,
Well,
I, I don't
okay.
I don't I don't
I
see the
can, I
problems.
can, I can.
I
But
was about to say just 3x it, maybe we'll only be able to listen to it like thrice instead of seven
yeah.
times. But yes, yes. Um, gosh, really enjoyed this book. We appreciate you guys joining us and continuing the discussion. Um, yes, yes. Viridian Gate is rapidly becoming one of my favorite lit RPG series.
Yeah, people have
Um,
been recommending it for a while, and I'm
we're
finally getting around to it.
we're
Though
behind the bandwagon.
I I will say I enjoy Viridian Gate Online currently more than I'm enjoying his Rogue Dungeon series.
Interesting. You were a big fan of the Rogue
I
Dungeon.
I
What?
like the elements,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I'm enjoying Viridian Gate a little bit more at the moment.
I think we need to do some more supporting lit RPG content. So watch out for those coming. Um, yeah, yeah. We appreciate you guys. Warformed, amazing series. Definitely I want to look into. I think there might be a tabletop for this. Yes, no, maybe so. Gosh,
Mm,
I want to play
I'm
in these
behind the
space.
ball on authors extras. I
Uh,
need
quick
to.
quick plug though, check out their subreddit if you're a fan of it. They have a CAD design competition going on. r/Warformed. Bryce O'Connor, the author himself, is moderator on that subreddit, and there is a whole bunch of cool goodness going on. Oh, actually, now I'm looking at it, it might be past the deadline on that, but yes.
Oh, just
Um,
kidding. Check it out anyway.
check it out anyway.
Oh man, almost 220 books now. We
You're
may need
welcome, White
recommendations.
Thatch. I'd be curious to look through our collection. We're getting up there in the hundreds. But yes.
Are books now as in total or books specifically lit RPG?
I think specifically lit RPG, depending on how we define that, we'd have to go through and look. I know we're over 600 audiobooks at this point. But yes, thank you for sharing this journey with us, White Thatch, and all its epic goodness. And
Kind of the
algorithm
purpose.
changes the Ritualist series, which we've been speculating and theory crafting on that. So I really want to check it out. That might be,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
disappointed in myself because normally for that specific author, I would say go by publication order because when you get to Ritualist 1 and you're at, oh, I think it was like 3 in the Divine Dungeon series when he started it, there's a lot of Easter eggs that are just like, oh yeah, right there. But then he throws you a couple curveballs where you got to get to the end of the Divine Dungeon to match up the beginning of the Ritualist, or sorry, Completionist
Loops on
Chronicles.
loops on
Yeah,
loops
yeah.
on loops. Yes.
He's one that we need to do some deep dive theory crafting, plug and play. Here's a related.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Yeah. Any more final thoughts, Pete, on Warformed?
Mm,
We plan. God laughs.
yep, that's my final thoughts.
Yes.
Or wait.
I ask you to judge me by the enemies I have made. Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Same time, same place.
Next
5
week.
p.m. Sunday Eastern Standard Time. Hope to catch you guys then.
Bye.
Bye.